11 civilizations erased from history, and the clues they left behind. For most of human history, we believed that the story of our past was complete, a simple line of progress, from scattered tribes to mighty kingdoms, from stone tools to temples, from myths to memory. But beneath this comforting timeline lies a truth we were never prepared to confront. Ours is not the first chapter of civilization, only the first one remembered. The earth holds its own memory, carved into stone, buried beneath oceans, hidden under continents, frozen in time. Across deserts, mountains, jungles, and abyssal plains, ruins emerge that shouldn't exist. Technologies appear centuries ahead of their era, languages arise with no ancestors, and myths echo the same catastrophe repeated in every culture on Earth. As if the world is trying to tell us something we once knew, but somehow forgot. History, as we know it, is built from fragments. The pieces that survived, the pieces we found, and the pieces we allowed ourselves to believe. But there were civilizations that left almost nothing behind. No chronicles, no legends, only faint whispers buried in the ground, clues scattered like ashes after a fire, waiting for someone to see what others ignored. Who were they? How did they live? What forces erased them from the face of the earth? And why do the traces they left still disturb the foundations of everything we think we know? Some vanished beneath rising oceans. Others were swallowed by deserts that once were forests. Many were wiped out in moments of unimaginable violence, comet impacts, volcanic winters, global floods, cosmic storms, and some were not destroyed. They were erased, carefully, intentionally, systematically removed from the record, as if someone wanted their memory buried forever. But ruins do not forget. Stones do not lie. Symbols carved in silence can outlive empires, languages, and entire ages of the world. When explorers uncovered the first impossible monoliths, blocks weighing hundreds of tons carved with precision impossible for their time, they assumed they were temples. When divers found underwater walls stretching for kilometers, aligned to the stars, they assumed they were natural formations. When archaeologists uncovered skulls, artifacts, mechanisms, and maps that contradicted official timelines, they called them anomalies, isolated mistakes. But what if they are pieces of the same puzzle? What if each discovery is a single letter in a message written across millennia? A message left by civilizations far older, far more complex, and far more advanced than anything recorded in our books. Civilizations erased not by chance, but by catastrophe, and sometimes by design. As you watch this documentary, imagine the world not as a straight line, but as a cycle, cultures rising, thriving, reaching unimaginable heights, only to be shattered by forces beyond control. And from the ashes, new civilizations emerging, unaware that they walk on the graves of worlds that came before. Imagine standing at the ruins of a forgotten city, its stones eroded by 10,000 years, and realizing that the people who lived there built structures more precise than ours, aligned with constellations that changed long ago, using knowledge we still struggle to understand. This is not fiction. These places exist, these artifacts exist, these mysteries exist. But to see the truth, we must first let go of the illusion that our history is complete. In this documentary, we will explore 11 civilizations erased from history, empires that thrived long before our calendars began, cultures wiped away by cataclysmic events, peoples whose cities now lie under oceans, inside mountains, beneath deserts, and in the deepest layers of forgotten time. We will follow the clues they left behind, symbols, ruins, artifacts, myths, alignments, and the silent testimony of stones older than memory. We will connect discoveries separated by continents and epochs. We will uncover the threads that bind them, and the forces that erased them, not to rewrite history, but to remember the histories that were written before ours. Because civilizations do not vanish without a trace, their ruins whisper, Their stories survive in the cracks of the world, and if we choose to listen, the earth will reveal a past far older and far stranger than we ever imagined. Prepare to see the world differently. Prepare to question everything. Prepare to descend into the forgotten layers of human existence and confront the civilizations that time tried to bury but could never truly erase. The timeline we were taught. For most of our lives, we were told that the story of humanity fits neatly into a simple sequence: a beginning, a middle, and us. Teachers, textbooks, documentaries, and institutions all agreed on one version of the timeline. The one that says civilization began only a few thousand years ago, emerging slowly from primitive tribes into organized societies, then kingdoms, then empires, and finally the world we know today. It is a comforting idea. It makes history feel ordered, predictable, understandable. But comfort has a price. It hides the complexities, the contradictions, and the uncomfortable truths buried beneath the surface. According to the official timeline, the earliest known civilizations arose around 6,000 years ago. Sumer, Egypt, the Indus Valley, China, the first great cultures of humanity. Before them, we are told, there were only nomads and scattered hunter-gatherers. People who wandered through forests and plains with no cities, no writing, no engineering, no astronomy, and no trace of organized knowledge. But when we begin to look beyond the simplified version of history, when we examine the ruins, the artifacts, the anomalies, and the myths that survive from the world before writing, something unsettling begins to happen. The timeline starts to fracture. The neat line we were taught becomes a puzzle. Pieces don't fit. Dates don't align. And the idea that civilization began only 6,000 years ago collapses under the weight of discovery. Archaeologists have found stone temples older than the pyramids, structures carved with precision that should have been impossible for early humans. Cities buried under oceans that went underwater long before recorded civilization supposedly existed. Artifacts with mathematics, symbolism, and engineering far ahead of their time. And myths from every corner of the world, repeating the same story. A great civilization came before, and it was destroyed. But for years, these discoveries were labeled anomalies, outliers, misinterpretations, anything but what they pointed to. A forgotten chapter of human history. Why? Because acknowledging them would mean rewriting everything. It would mean admitting that the story we were taught is incomplete, or worse, that much of it was constructed around limited evidence, chosen narratives, and assumptions that no longer hold. For decades, researchers who challenged the accepted timeline were dismissed. They were called fringe, pseudoscientific, speculative. But today, with new tools, new excavations, underwater mapping, satellite imaging, and a deeper understanding of the past, their questions no longer sound unreasonable. They sound inevitable. How can a supposedly primitive culture carve stones weighing hundreds of tons with perfect symmetry? Why do so many ancient sites align with astronomical positions that required knowledge of precession, something we, officially, discovered only in relatively modern times? Why do ruins in South America, Africa, Asia, and the Mediterranean share architectural patterns, tool marks, and building methods despite being separated by oceans and millennia? And why do so many ancient traditions insist that they inherited their knowledge from civilizations that came before? Every answer provided by the traditional timeline leads to more questions. Every question leads to more contradictions. And every contradiction hints at something far greater, a truth that was buried, erased, or forgotten long before our recorded history began. The timeline we were taught explains only the survivors. It tells the story of the cultures that lived long enough to develop writing, preserve archives, and leave records behind. But what about the civilizations that didn't survive? What about the ones destroyed by cataclysm, swallowed by oceans, or erased by the passage of time? What about those who built before the flood myths, before the deserts formed, before the ice melted, before our current cycle of humanity began? History, as we know it, is not a complete chronicle. It is the story of what remained. It is the memory of the world after a great forgetting. And when we examine the archaeological record without the constraint of the official timeline, a pattern begins to emerge. One that suggests civilization may be far older, far more complex, and far more cyclical than we ever imagined. Perhaps we are not the first humans to reach advanced levels of knowledge. Perhaps we are simply the first to survive long enough to write our version of the story. If that is true, then the ruins scattered across our planet are not anomalies. They are survivors, fragments of worlds erased by catastrophe, by conflict, by silence, or by design. This documentary does not attempt to rewrite history. Instead, it seeks to explore the histories that were never written, or were written and then lost. To understand who we are, we must first understand who came before us, and the clues they left behind may hold the answers. As we move forward, we will explore civilizations that do not appear in textbooks, societies that challenge the boundaries of archaeology, and worlds that vanished so completely that only whispers remain. But every whisper is a beginning, and every ruin is a doorway. The first of those doorways lies ahead, the ones that shouldn't exist. If the timeline we were taught begins to crumble under scrutiny, the next question becomes inevitable. What civilizations existed before the ones we know, and why were they erased? Across the world, 3 cultures stand as silent rebellions against the official history. They appear in no textbooks, have no preserved chronicles, and often exist only through ruins, symbols, and structures that defy explanation. Yet they share something extraordinary. Each one displays knowledge, architecture, or complexity far beyond what their alleged era should allow. These are not myths, they are not legends. They are places, physical, measurable, carved in stone, and they challenge the very foundation of our historical narrative. Civilization 1, the builders of the Yonaguni Monument. Japan, a city beneath the waves that should not be there. In 1986, a diver exploring the waters near Yonaguni Island in Japan stumbled upon something that would ignite one of the greatest archaeological debates of the modern era. A massive underwater complex of terraces, steps, platforms, roads, and walls that seemed too perfect to be natural, yet too ancient to fit into known history. The official explanation labeled the structure as a natural formation. Sharp angles? Coincidence? Perfect right corners? Erosion. Geometric platforms? Geological quirk. The staircase that descends into a plaza-like area? Optical illusion. But divers, geologists, and independent researchers noticed something that shattered the simplicity of the natural formation argument. The monument was aligned. Aligned with the stars. Aligned with the cardinal directions. Aligned with the rising sun during the solstices. Nature does not align itself with cosmic precision. Some archaeologists propose that Yonaguni might be over 10,000 years old, dating back to before the end of the last ice age, a time when, according to the official narrative, no civilization capable of such construction should have existed. Yet the monument is there, unmistakable, massive, and undeniably engineered. Clues they left behind. Steps carved into bedrock with uniform height terraces, consistent with urban planning retaining walls and straight corridors, erosion patterns suggesting long-term exposure above water. The builders of Yonaguni remain nameless, but their work speaks louder than any chronicle ever could. Civilization 2, the forgotten Mahir builders of Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, a society older than Egypt. Scattered across the landscapes of Senegal, the Gambia, and Mali lie thousands of towering megaliths arranged in perfect circles. Stone monuments older than the pyramids, more numerous than Stonehenge, and engineered with a precision that should not have been possible for a society with no known written language. Yet these people existed. Archaeologists estimate that the Senegambian stone circles may be between 1,500 to 7,000 years old. but the variation in dating suggests something more complex. They were built across an era long enough to hint at a sustained and organized civilization, one capable of quarrying, transporting, and erecting stones weighing several tons over vast regions. The problem is, we know almost nothing about them. No name, no kingdom, no myths, no artifacts indicating a ruling class or organized religion. Only the stones remain. What's even more intriguing is the standardization of measurements. The builders used mathematical consistency across different regions, implying shared knowledge and a cultural unity spanning hundreds of kilometers. Clues they left behind: stone circles aligned with astronomical events, megaliths placed in patterns reflecting star constellations, burial mounds with unusual grave goods, evidence of quarrying techniques far more advanced than expected. Why was this civilization erased? Disease, migration, climate change, or something far larger? A societal collapse lost in the void of prehistory. We may never know their name, but their stones still whisper of a people who mastered both architecture and astronomy in a time when such mastery should not have existed. Civilization 3, the Uru of Lake Titicaca, Bolivia and Peru. A civilization older than the Andes as we know them. High in the Andes, above 3,800 meters of altitude, lies Lake Titicaca, and within it, clues of one of the oldest civilizations ever known, the Uru. Today, only a small group identifying as Uru survives, living on floating reed islands. But archaeological evidence shows that their ancestors occupied the region long before the rise of the Tiwanaku or Inca empires, long before organized kingdoms existed in the Andes, and possibly long before the last ice age ended. Among the most astonishing features tied to the Uru ancestry are the megalithic foundations near and beneath the lake. Some stones weigh more than 100 tons. Some display precision cuts that rival the famous stones of Sacsayhuaman. Others form massive platforms submerged beneath the waterline, suggesting the lake was once lower, or the structures were built before the water rose. More intriguingly, the Uru people have a legend that predates their own oral history. They say they were the people of the water, the survivors of a flood that swallowed their original homeland. A flood older than recorded history. A flood echoed in myths across the world. Clues they left behind: submerged stone platforms at depths inconsistent with known lake levels, legends of pre-flood origins architecture, showing advanced stonework predating later Andean cultures, genetic studies suggesting ancient lineage older than surrounding populations. The Uru are a living remnant of a forgotten world, carrying within their stories the memory of a civilization that once thrived, and then vanished beneath rising waters and time. These three civilizations, the builders of Yonaguni, the Mehir architects of Africa, and the ancestral Uru, represent the first fractures in the timeline we were taught. They are the first undeniable signs that human history is not a straight line, but a tapestry of forgotten worlds. And as we move deeper into this exploration, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. If these civilizations existed long before they should have, what else lies buried beneath the surface of our past? The next clue comes from a type of structure that defies logic itself. Architecture so advanced, so impossible, that even modern engineers struggle to explain it. Impossible architecture. If the first three civilizations challenge the official timeline, what comes next threatens to dismantle it entirely. Because in every corner of the world, scattered across continents that supposedly had no contact with each other, we find structures that should not exist. Not with the tools, the knowledge, or the abilities attributed to ancient humanity. These constructions do not simply contradict archaeological expectations. They defy them. They strain logic, engineering, and even physics. They appear in regions separated by oceans, built by cultures with no shared language or recorded connection. And yet, they bear the same fingerprints: precision, alignment, scale, and purpose, as if they were echoes of a knowledge that predates them all. a knowledge inherited, not invented. Let us begin where this mystery becomes impossible to ignore. 1. Precision beyond ancient tools. Archaeology tells us that early civilizations carved stone using simple tools: hammer stones, copper chisels, wooden wedges soaked in water. But the stones we find in the megalithic structures of the ancient world are not merely shaped, they are engineered. At Sacsayhuaman in Peru, boulders weighing 100 tons fit together with such perfection that a sheet of paper cannot slide between them. The cuts are so smooth, the edges so crisp, that some surfaces appear as if they were molded, not chiseled, and the joints curve in 3 dimensions, locking the stones like puzzle pieces in ways modern stonemasons struggle to replicate. At Ollantaytambo, stones of red diorite, one of the hardest rocks on Earth, were shaped with a level of precision that would require diamond tools today. Yet we are told they were carved with bronze chisels, which do not scratch diorite. In Egypt, some blocks in the Great Pyramid show tool marks that resemble advanced machining, parallel striations consistent with high-speed cutting, not hand tools. Core samples removed from granite columns display spiral grooves, as if extracted with drills that rotated at speeds impossible for ancient wooden bow drills. In Lebanon, at Baalbek, lie 3 of the largest building stones ever used by humans, each weighing between 800 and 200 tons. Modern cranes struggle to lift such weight, yet someone, thousands of years ago, quarried them, transported them, and placed them with mathematical precision upon perfectly leveled foundations. These are not illusions. These are facts, measured, photographed, undeniable. If ancient tools were truly as primitive as we are told, how were these feats achieved? The answer does not lie in the tools, but in the knowledge behind them. 2. Alignments that defy chance. One site with perfect alignment can be a coincidence. 5 sites with perfect alignment may still be luck. But dozens of ancient sites across the world aligned to astronomical events, solstices, equinoxes, or constellations. That becomes something else, a pattern. Consider this. The pyramids of Giza align with the belt of Orion. The pyramids of Teotihuacan mirror the same constellation. The Nabta Playa megaliths in the Sahara align to stars that marked the summer solstice more than 6,000 years ago. Stonehenge aligns with the midsummer sunrise and midwinter sunset. Göbekli Tepe, older than agriculture, aligns to celestial movements with a precision that would require millennia of sky observation. Were ancient people simply watching the sky? No. These alignments required not just casual observation but astronomical knowledge, long-term measurement, and sophisticated modeling of precession. The gradual wobble of Earth's axis, a cycle of nearly 26,000 years. Yet according to the official timeline, early humans did not even have writing, let alone the mathematical framework to track celestial cycles spanning tens of thousands of years. Where did this knowledge come from? Was it learned, inherited, or rediscovered? The question grows heavier with every ruin that aligns not to the sky of their era, but to skies from ages long before. 3. Engineering that should not exist. Some structures exhibit an engineering mastery that resists explanation even today. In India, the Kailasa temple at Ellora was carved from the top down, out of a single massive rock, requiring the removal of over 200,000 tons of stone. Yet there is no sign of scaffolding, no evidence of debris on site, and no record of the techniques used. In Malta, the megalithic temples contain stones weighing up to 20 tons, arranged with sophisticated acoustic properties, chambers that amplify sound, create resonance, and manipulate frequency. It suggests knowledge of harmonic engineering, something far beyond the Neolithic era. In Bolivia, the site of Puma Punku contains stones cut with machine-like precision, perfect right angles, interlocking joints, and interior cavities consistent with advanced tools. Some blocks resemble prefabricated components of a larger structure, as if engineered rather than sculpted. In Egypt's Osirian, The architectural style is so radically different from surrounding temples that many researchers believe it predates dynastic Egypt by millennia, built not by pharaohs, but by an unknown predecessor. And at Göbekli Tepe, monumental stone pillars weighing up to 20 tons were arranged in circular complexes by people who, according to archaeology, had no cities, no agriculture, and no social structure capable of such planning. These contradictions pile upon one another, forming a mountain of evidence pointing to the same conclusion. Ancient people possessed knowledge that surpasses what we attribute to their era. This leads us to a question far more provocative than how did they build this? It leads us to who taught them. 4. A memory. Older than civilizations. If these structures were isolated, we could dismiss them as anomalies. But they are not isolated. They form a pattern, a global network of impossibility. The same architectural fingerprints appear in South America, North Africa, the Middle East, Asia, the Pacific, and even beneath oceans. Different cultures, different continents, different eras, same engineering logic. It suggests something radical. Knowledge was shared, inherited, or preserved from a time before the civilizations we know. Not folklore, not myth, a legacy from societies erased long before recorded history. And like all legacies, it leaves clues. Clues hidden in stone, clues hidden in ruins, clues hidden across continents, waiting for someone to see the connections that others ignored. These structures are not reminders of what ancient humans could do. They are reminders of what ancient humans remembered. And the civilizations that remembered the most are the ones we explore next. Civilizations that rose long before Egypt, long before Sumer, long before any written record, and left behind ruins so enigmatic that even the impossible architecture of this chapter becomes merely the beginning. The silent worlds that vanished. As we move deeper into the forgotten layers of human history, a pattern emerges with unsettling clarity. The civilizations we have explored so far challenge the boundaries of archaeology, rewriting the edges of what is considered possible. But the next 3 civilizations do something even more extraordinary. They do not just raise questions, they haunt them. They exist in fragments, myths, ruins, and symbols scattered across the world like pieces of a memory the earth itself is struggling to hold on to. These were societies that reached remarkable complexity long before the civilizations we study in school. They possessed architecture, astronomy, mathematics, and cultural depth that should not have existed in their respective eras. Yet they did. And the silence surrounding them is one of the greatest mysteries of our past. What follows are 3 civilizations forgotten not only by time, but deliberately excluded from the narrative. Not because their stories lacked importance, but because their existence defies the timeline we constructed. Their clues remain. Their names, in many cases, do not. Civilization 4, the builders of Nabta, Playa Sahara Desert, Africa. Long before Egypt rose along the Nile, long before the pyramids carved their silhouettes into the horizon, a civilization deep in the Sahara built something extraordinary. Today, the region is a harsh, lifeless desert, but thousands of years ago, it was fertile grassland, dotted with lakes and rivers. And in this once lush landscape stands Nabta Playa, a megalithic stone circle older than Stonehenge and far older than the Great Pyramid. What makes it remarkable is not only its age, but its purpose. It is a sophisticated astronomical observatory. The stones mark the summer solstice with astonishing precision. Their alignments correspond to constellations and star movements that require long-term observation spanning centuries. The structure also encodes knowledge of precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis, something our modern science formalized only after thousands of years of study. According to the official narrative, the people of this era were simple pastoralists. They herded cattle, built temporary shelters, and had no writing, no metallurgy, no architecture. Yet here, in the middle of a prehistoric landscape, They created an observatory that required advanced mathematical planning, celestial knowledge, and deliberate engineering. Clues they left behind: stone alignments matching constellations, ceremonial structures arranged with geometric precision, evidence of long-term astronomical tracking signs of ritual activity and social organization. Nabta Playa is a window into a world that should not have existed so early. And yet it did, quietly rewriting the origins of scientific understanding. Civilization 5. The maritime engineers of Sunda, Southeast Asia. Beneath the waters of Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand lies what was once a vast connected landmass known as the Sunda Shelf. During the last ice age, it was not a chain of islands, but a sprawling continent teeming with life and humanity. When the ice melted, sea levels rose by more than 100 meters, swallowing entire coastlines. What remains today are underwater ruins, submerged river systems, ancient shorelines, and the faint outlines of structures that indicate a maritime civilization far more advanced than previously acknowledged. Satellite imaging reveals grids, walls, and rectilinear patterns beneath shallow waters, patterns that do not appear natural. Local myths speak of a great land that sank beneath the sea, a place of knowledge, trade, and culture that vanished in a single epical shift. The flood myths of Southeast Asia are not isolated. They align with stories across the world that describe a lost homeland wiped out by rising waters. Some researchers propose that Sunda may have been home to a maritime people capable of long-distance navigation long before known civilizations took to the seas. Their genetic legacy stretches from Polynesia to Madagascar, hinting at migrations that predate written history. Clues they left behind: submerged settlements with geometric layouts, traditions of ancient seafaring across vast distances, linguistic fragments connecting distant island cultures, mythological accounts of a drowned homeland. If true, the Sunda civilization represents one of the earliest complex societies on Earth, erased by a global event and remembered only through its echoes across the Pacific. Civilization 6. The mysterious builders of Caral, Peru. In the coastal valleys of Peru lies a civilization older than the pyramids of Egypt, older than the cities of Mesopotamia, older than nearly everything we consider the beginning of civilization. Caral is one of the oldest urban centers ever discovered, dating back more than 5,000 years, and yet it lacks the hallmarks of early societies. No signs of warfare, no weapons, no defensive structures. Instead, Caral reveals something different: a society based on harmony, engineering, agriculture, and trade. Its pyramids rise in perfect geometric form, built with advanced knowledge of seismic protection, incorporating sand-filled bags to absorb tectonic shifts. This technology predates similar concepts by thousands of years. Caral's builders understood wind patterns, acoustic resonance, irrigation engineering, and urban planning on a scale unprecedented for their era. Their architecture is elegant, precise, and aligned with astronomical events. And yet, despite their sophistication, we do not know what they called themselves, what they believed, or why they disappeared. Clues they left behind: pyramids built with anti-seismic engineering, complex irrigation canals, and agricultural innovations. Quipus, a potential early form of symbolic communication, evidence of long-distance trade networks. Caral raises a profound question. How does a peaceful, technologically advanced civilization appear fully formed without earlier developmental stages? What came before it? And what knowledge did it carry forward from an even older world? These three civilizations, Nabta, Playa, Sunda, and Caral, were not isolated anomalies. They were part of a deeper human story, one that hints at forgotten cycles of knowledge and destruction, memory and loss. Their existence forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. If such advanced societies thrived long before our recorded civilizations, then our understanding of human origins is incomplete. And these are only the beginning. The next clues lie not in what ancient people built, but in what destroyed them. Preparing the path to the next chapter. Cataclysms that reset humanity. Every great civilization carries within its ruins the shadow of a catastrophe. Not always war, not always famine, not always failure, Sometimes the destruction comes from forces so vast, so sudden, and so overwhelming that no human society, no matter how advanced, could escape it. Throughout the world, across continents separated by oceans and millennia, we find evidence of cataclysms so severe that they erased entire cultures, altered coastlines, shifted climates, and fundamentally reshaped the world our ancestors knew. These were not isolated disasters. They were global events. Events powerful enough to reset humanity, wipe away knowledge, and force survivors to start again from nothing. If we wish to understand why civilizations vanish, we must follow the scars left behind by the planet itself. The Younger Dryas impact. Hypothesis. More than 12,800 years ago, the world changed in a moment. At the end of the last ice age, when climates were stabilizing and human populations were beginning to flourish, something catastrophic happened. Global temperatures plummeted almost instantly. Large mammals vanished, human settlements scattered. Forests died and deserts expanded. For decades, the cause was unknown. But growing evidence suggests a dramatic possibility, a cosmic impact. Around the world, scientists have discovered layers of blackened earth containing nanodiamonds, melted glass, shock-fractured minerals, and carbon spherules, materials that require temperatures far beyond anything produced naturally on Earth. These layers appear simultaneously across North America, Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. The pattern is unmistakable. Something enormous struck the planet, or exploded in the atmosphere, unleashing a chain reaction of fires, floods, and climate collapse. If an advanced civilization existed before this event, its destruction would have been complete. Cities would be erased, knowledge lost, survivors scattered. Myths across the world speak of this moment. A great fire in the sky, a roaring flood, darkness that lasted years, and a world reborn from ashes. These myths are not isolated stories. They are memories. The global flood narratives. Nearly every ancient culture describes a single shared event, a massive flood that destroyed the world, swallowing landscapes, kingdoms, and entire peoples. Mesopotamia, India, China, Mesoamerica, the Pacific Islands, Australia, the Andes, the Mediterranean. Each culture carried the same story, with different names and faces, but the same pattern. The waters rose, the world drowned, the survivors fled to high places, and a new age began. For centuries, historians dismissed these stories as legends, but geological and genetic evidence suggests that sea levels did rise dramatically at the end of the last ice age, swallowing coastlines where early civilizations may have thrived. Entire regions that are now underwater once supported human settlement. Continental shelves around the world, Sunda, Doggerland, the Bering Land Bridge, all vanished beneath the rising oceans. If a civilization developed advanced knowledge during that time, its cities would now rest at the bottom of the sea, unrecognizable, sediment-covered, forgotten. Some already have been found. Others remain hidden beneath hundreds of meters of water. The flood stories may not be myths. They may be memories of a world that existed before ours. The volcanic winters. Not all destruction came from above. Some rose from beneath the earth. Around 74,000 years ago, the Toba supervolcano erupted in what is now Indonesia. It was one of the largest volcanic events in 2 million years. Ash spread across continents. Temperatures dropped. The sky darkened. Human populations may have shrunk to a few thousand individuals. It was a genetic bottleneck, a near-extinction event. But Toba was not alone. Around 1600 BCE, the eruption of Thera, modern-day Santorini, triggered tsunamis and ash clouds that devastated the Minoan civilization. In South America, massive eruptions produced pyroclastic flows that reshaped entire regions. In North America, volcanic winters forced migrations, cultural collapse, and the abandonment of settlements. Volcanoes erase. They bury. They transform. They leave landscapes unrecognizable. If a civilization built cities near volcanic zones, their memory would vanish in a single violent moment. The shifting of climate civilizations rise not only through ingenuity, but through geography. Food, water, stable temperatures, fertile soil, these factors allow order, surplus, and knowledge to flourish. But climate is not constant. Throughout the Holocene, sudden periods of extreme droughts and abrupt cooling cycles changed the trajectory of human societies. The collapse of the Akkadian Empire, the fall of the Old Kingdom of Egypt, the decline of the Maya, the disappearance of the ancestral Pueblo. Each event linked, directly or indirectly, to climate anomalies. Now imagine the same process applied to much older civilizations. From eras in which we have no written record, their disappearance would leave no ruins, no texts, no continuity, only silence. Climate can build civilizations, climate can erase them. The geological record remembers. While human memory is fragile, the Earth's memory is not. The planet keeps a record of its cataclysms in ice cores, sediment layers, fossils, minerals, and the scars etched across continents. Through these markers, we see repeated cycles of destruction and renewal, cycles that align suspiciously well with the rise and fall of forgotten civilizations. But the most compelling evidence lies in the convergence of data. Cosmic impacts, volcanic winters, global floods, abrupt climate shifts. These events did not happen in isolation. They formed chains, waves of destruction that reshaped the world again and again. Civilizations may have risen before ours, and risen high. But when the world changed, they vanished. Not slowly, not gradually, but instantly. What survives catastrophe is chance. What survives memory is story. What survives time is stone. And many stones still speak of societies erased by the world, but not forgotten by it. As we move forward, we must shift our focus from the forces that destroyed civilizations to the ones that built them. Because after every collapse, a new world emerges, a new culture rises, a new memory forms. The next clues lie within those cultures, the ones that carried remnants of the world before. Civilizations 7 through 9 await. The memory keepers of a lost world. If global cataclysms erased entire chapters of human history, the civilizations that emerged after those events did not arise in isolation. They inherited something, not directly through writing or preserved technology, but through fragments of memory, symbols, myths, alignments, and methods of construction that seem strangely advanced for their era. These were not the first civilizations. They were the survivors, the inheritors, the ones who carried the last embers of forgotten worlds. Civilizations 7 through 9 stand at the crossroads between what was lost and what endured. Their ruins display the echoes of a deeper past, as though they arose on foundations much older than themselves. Their knowledge hints at something they didn't invent, but recovered. They are not the most famous ancient cultures. They are the ones quietly holding clues no one expected. Civilization 7, the Cyclopean builders of the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean Basin. Throughout the Mediterranean, scattered across Greece, Italy, Malta, and Turkey, stand massive stone walls known as Cyclopean masonry. Their blocks are so large, so irregular, and so precisely fitted that classical writers attributed them to mythical one-eyed giants. But behind the myth lies a harder truth. These structures predate the classical civilizations by millennia. Their age is uncertain, but their engineering surpasses much later cultures. Some stones weigh dozens of tons. Others are carved with complex joints that interlock like three-dimensional puzzles. In Italy, the walls of Alatri, Norba, and Segni challenge the skills of modern stonemasons. In Greece, the fortifications of Tiryns and Mycenae blend colossal blocks with extraordinary precision. In Malta, the megalithic temples, older than both Stonehenge and the pyramids, display curves, chambers, and astronomical alignments that suggest knowledge far beyond their alleged builders. What's striking is that these sites share the same construction logic, the same patterns, the same architectural fingerprints, yet they span thousands of kilometers and multiple cultures. Clues they left behind: polygonal stonework with interlocking joints, megalithic blocks placed without mortar alignments, to celestial events, acoustic chambers with resonant properties. Who taught them to build like this? And why do so many of these structures appear to be repairs or reconstructions of something even older? The Cyclopean builders stand as silent custodians of a knowledge that predates them, carrying techniques they should not have possessed. Civilization 8. The Jomon and the Forgotten Coasts of Ancient Japan. Japan. Long before Japan's classical eras, there existed the Jomon, a culture so old, so enduring, and so complex that it stretches what we consider possible for prehistoric societies. The Jomon lived more than 16,000 years ago. They created pottery older than any known in the world. They constructed large ceremonial complexes. They possessed advanced fishing, weaving, ritual practices, and perhaps even early forms of symbolic communication. But what makes the Jomon extraordinary is not what they built on land. It's what lies beneath the sea. Off the Japanese coast, divers have discovered submerged structures, terraces, platforms and pathways that bear uncanny resemblance to purposeful architecture. Some align to solar events, others appear to mirror constellations, and several are located at depths consistent with shorelines during the glacial periods. This suggests something remarkable. The Jomon may have inherited the remnants of an even older coastal civilization, one erased by rising seas at the end of the Ice Age. Clues they left behind: sophisticated pottery dating back 16,000 years, submerged coastal ruins predating known history, large ritual sites indicating complex social organization myths, describing ancient peoples who lived before the sea rose. The Jomon challenge the notion that prehistoric societies were primitive. Their longevity, knowledge, and coastal engineering hint at a forgotten chapter of humanity, one preserved through tradition, but drowned by time. Civilization 9. The builders of the ancient Indus-Saraswati world. India and Pakistan. One of the greatest enigmas in ancient history lies in the Indus-Saraswati civilization. Though often overshadowed by Egypt and Mesopotamia, it stands as one of the most advanced early civilizations, and one of the least understood. This society built cities with grid layouts, advanced drainage systems, standardized weights and measures, and architecture reflecting mathematical precision. Its urban planning was far ahead of its time. Houses had private bathrooms, streets aligned perfectly. Infrastructure suggests a deep understanding of engineering. But the greatest mystery is their writing. The Indus script remains undeciphered. No Rosetta Stone has been found. Their symbolic system is consistent across thousands of miles and centuries, yet we do not know what it says. And then there is the Saraswati River itself. Once a mighty waterway described in ancient texts, it vanished due to climate shifts and tectonic changes. But satellite imagery reveals its ancient path, wider and more complex than previously imagined, suggesting that many Indus cities that once thrived along its banks lie buried beneath desert or farmland. Clues they left behind: undeciphered script, consistent across large distances, precise city planning using mathematical ratios, water management technologies ahead of their time, evidence of long-distance trade and cultural uniformity. What makes this civilization even more intriguing is the sudden nature of its decline. There is no clear sign of invasion, no large-scale destruction, no dramatic collapse. Instead, it simply fades from history, leaving behind cities that look as if the people walked away overnight. Where did they go? Why did they leave? What knowledge did they carry with them? Some researchers propose that the Indus-Saraswati people were descendants of an earlier, more ancient world, a remnant of a civilization destroyed by cataclysm and rebuilt by survivors who carried fragments of inherited knowledge. If true, then the Indus-Saraswati world is not a beginning, but a continuation. These three civilizations, Cyclopean builders, Jomon coastal societies, and the Indus-Saraswati world, represent bridges between forgotten eras and the present. Their architecture, knowledge, and survival hint at a lineage of memory far older than their ruins suggest. Each of them carries the echo of something before, something lost, something erased. And it is within this echo that we find the path to our final civilizations, those whose ruins remain the most mysterious of all, whose clues lean closest to the truth, and whose existence confronts the deepest questions about our origin. These are civilizations that were not merely advanced, they were impossible, and now we must follow their trail. Forbidden discoveries. History is not only shaped by what we discover, it is shaped by what we choose to accept. For every artifact displayed in a museum, there are discoveries locked away in archives, sealed in vaults, dismissed in academic papers, or quietly removed from public discussion. Not because they are fake or unreliable, but because they do not fit the timeline. They do not reinforce the accepted narrative. They raise questions that challenge the foundations of archaeology itself. These are the forbidden discoveries. Objects that should not exist. Artifacts that defy their time period. Evidence that suggests a far older, far more complex human past. Some were found by accident, others by explorers. A few by scientists who expected one thing and uncovered something that should have been impossible. Each one stands as a fracture in the story we are told. Each one whispers the same message: someone came before. Let us follow the trail of the most unsettling discoveries humanity has ever tried to ignore. 1. The Piri race map. In 1513, an Ottoman admiral drew a map of the world. Not unusual for the era. What was unusual was its accuracy. The Piri race map depicts the coastlines of South America and Africa with precision unavailable to European cartographers of the time. It shows the Andes before they were fully documented. It outlines the Falkland Islands, which were officially discovered centuries later. And most astonishing of all, it portrays Antarctica without ice. Modern surveys confirm that the map matches the subglacial coastline revealed by 20th century seismic research. But Antarctica has been covered in ice for thousands of years. No known civilization from the Middle Ages, or any time in known history, could have charted an ice-free Antarctica. Piri Reis himself wrote that his map was based on ancient charts from lost times. If true, then someone mapped the world before the ice returned. Not medieval sailors, not ancient explorers. Someone far older. 2. The Baghdad Battery. In 1936, archaeologists unearthed small clay jars near Baghdad. Inside each one was a copper cylinder and an iron rod. When replicated, these vessels produced a measurable electrical charge. The discovery stunned researchers. Electricity was not supposed to exist in the ancient world, not in any form. Yet these simple, functional devices demonstrate the principles of electrochemistry. They could have been used for electroplating metals, preserving texts, or producing small electrical currents. If the Baghdad battery is authentic, then ancient cultures understood electricity long before the modern age. This is more than an anomaly. It is a fragment of forgotten technology. 3. The Antikythera mechanism. Found in a shipwreck off the coast of Greece, the Antikythera mechanism looks like a corroded piece of metal, until X-rays reveal over 30 gears of astonishing complexity. It is a mechanical computer capable of predicting eclipses, tracking the motions of the sun and moon, modeling planetary cycles, and coordinating them with mathematical precision. The problem is its age. The mechanism dates to at least 2,100 years ago. According to the timeline, no civilization should have had knowledge of differential gearing, analog computation, or advanced astronomical modeling at that time. Even medieval Europe, nearly 1,500 years later, could not replicate this machine. Its existence suggests one of two possibilities. Either a lost genius invented technology centuries ahead of its time, or the device represents the survival of knowledge inherited from an earlier civilization. No other mechanism like it has ever been found. Nothing explains how the Greeks could have built it without predecessors. It is a relic of a lineage that should not exist. 4. The Dropa stones. In the remote mountains of China, a series of circular stone discs were discovered. Each disc contains a spiral groove and microscopic inscriptions that remain only partially deciphered. Though some dismiss the discovery as controversial, others point to radiocarbon estimates suggesting the stones may be 10,000 to 12,000 years old, a time frame impossible for engraved technological artifacts, according to the accepted timeline of human development. The inscriptions describe a people who came from the sky, whose craft crashed into the mountains, and whose descendants mingled with the local population. But myth or not, the physical objects exist, and their age is undeniable. They should not exist, yet they do. 5. The London Hammer. In Texas, miners found a hammer sealed inside a nodule of rock. The rock itself dates not thousands but hundreds of millions of years. The hammer, however, is clearly human-made, a metal head with a wooden handle fossilized in place. The tool is impossible within the accepted timeline. It should not be embedded in rock that predates humanity by unimaginable spans of time. Yet scientific tests on the metal indicate its purity exceeds modern standards. This discovery is often dismissed, ignored, or minimized. But the contradiction remains. If the rock is authentic, then our understanding of human chronology collapses. 6. The crystal skulls across Central America. Perfectly carved crystal skulls exist that supposedly date back to ancient Mesoamerican cultures. Despite claims of later forgeries, several skulls defy explanation with their flawless symmetry, lack of tool marks, and optical qualities, suggesting methods unavailable to pre-Columbian civilizations. Some researchers argue that the skulls were crafted using unknown techniques, possibly involving long periods of friction or methods lost to time. Others propose they reflect mythological artifacts passed down from even older cultures. Whether genuine or symbolic, the craftsmanship exceeds what the timeline allows. These forbidden discoveries are not isolated curiosities. They form a pattern that matches the civilizations we explored earlier. A pattern of memory, a pattern of inheritance, a pattern of knowledge left behind by worlds erased. Artifacts that should not exist. Maps that show places no one could have charted. Technologies centuries ahead of their era. Objects embedded in geologic layers that defy comprehension. Each discovery cracks the narrative. Together, they rupture it. Because if these artifacts are real, and many of them unquestionably are, then humanity's past is not merely incomplete. It is built atop the ruins of something far older. Now, we must turn to the final civilizations, the last two, the ones whose ruins overshadow all others. The ones whose existence points directly to the truth we have been moving toward since the beginning. Civilizations 10 and 11. The final keys. The ones closest to the truth. Throughout this documentary, each civilization has brought us closer to a single, unavoidable realization. Humanity has lived many ages. Some remembered, most forgotten, a few erased. Now we reach the final two civilizations in our journey. They are not simply advanced. They are not simply mysterious. They stand at the threshold where archaeology meets impossibility, where history dissolves, where memory becomes myth, and myth becomes evidence. These last two civilizations are the closest we have ever come to the truth behind humanity's forgotten past. They are the ones whose ruins should not exist. The ones whose engineering defies explanation. The ones that hint at a world before our world. Civilizations 10 and 11 do not merely challenge the timeline. They redefine it. Civilization 10, the builders of Tiahuanaco and Pumapunku, Bolivia, and the Altiplano High on the Andean Plateau, at more than 12,000 feet above sea level, lie ruins that should not exist in any timeline we accept. Tiahuanaco and its sister site, Pumapunku, are unlike any other archaeological zone on Earth. The stones here are carved with such geometric precision, such perfect symmetry, such machine-like accuracy, that even modern engineers are left stunned. Massive andesite blocks weighing over 100 tons are cut with interior right angles, perfectly flat surfaces, precise grooves, and interlocking edges that resemble industrial prefabrication. Andesite is one of the hardest rocks in the world. Bronze tools cannot shape it. Even modern steel tools struggle. Yet the builders of Pumapunku shaped these stones as if they were working with clay. Some blocks contain perfectly drilled holes, consistent diameters, and parallel surfaces. Others display complex channels and recesses that match modern engineering standards. If the ruins were discovered in a factory, no one would question their artificial origin. But these stones rest in an ancient archaeological site, attributed to a civilization with no known writing, limited metallurgy, and no wheel-based transport. The contradictions do not end with the stones. Tiahuanaco itself appears to be far older than is officially admitted. Certain structures align not with the modern sky, but with celestial positions that existed more than 10,000 years ago. If these alignments are intentional, the site predates every classical civilization by a wide margin. Some researchers suggest that Pumapunku was not built by the Tiahuanaco culture as often claimed, but by an earlier, unknown civilization whose knowledge was inherited and adapted by later peoples. Clues they left behind: megalithic stonework, engineered with impossible precision, astronomical alignments millennia older than official dates, ruins that appear shattered by sudden violent force myths, describing gods who emerged from the deep waters after a cataclysm taken together. Tiahuanaco and Pumapunku form one of the strongest pieces of evidence that the world once held a civilization far more advanced than the ones we know. A civilization erased not by time, but by something abrupt, something catastrophic. The next civilization brings us even closer to that event. Civilization 11. The builders of Göbekli Tepe, Turkey. On a hill in southeastern Turkey lies the oldest monument ever discovered, and the one that should not exist, even in theory. Göbekli Tepe is a temple complex that predates agriculture, pottery, metallurgy, the wheel, and settled life. It was built more than 11,000 years ago, long before any known civilization. Yet it displays architecture, artistry, and engineering far beyond what hunter-gatherers should have been capable of. Massive T-shaped pillars weighing up to 20 tons stand arranged in circular enclosures. Many are carved with high-relief images of animals, symbols, and abstract patterns. Some carvings display anatomical accuracy that suggests long-term observation, advanced skill, and cultural complexity. But the greatest mystery is that the entire site was deliberately buried, not destroyed, buried. Someone covered Göbekli Tepe with tons of earth and debris, sealing it like a time capsule. Why? And when? Evidence suggests it was buried around the same time the Younger Dryas impact event ended, a global catastrophe that reshaped climates and likely destroyed earlier civilizations. This raises a question few dare to ask. Was Göbekli Tepe built by survivors of a lost world? If so, it would explain its sudden appearance, its advanced iconography, its sophisticated construction with no precursor, its symbolic language reminiscent of a deeper tradition, its abrupt burial as if protecting something. The carvings themselves hint at cosmic events, astronomical alignments, and a memory of disaster. One pillar appears to depict a comet impact. Another encodes star positions from the sky of more than 10,000 years ago. Göbekli Tepe is not a beginning. It is an echo, a whisper from the last civilization that remembered the world before the flood. And when it was buried, that memory went with it. The builders of Pumapunku and the architects of Göbekli Tepe stand as the final pillars of a forgotten timeline. They do not merely suggest an ancient world, they point directly to it. A world that possessed advanced engineering, charted the stars across millennia, understood cycles of catastrophe, survived a global event, and passed knowledge onward in fragments. These are not isolated anomalies. They are the final chapters of an earlier human story. And now, as we reach the end of this journey, the truth is no longer hidden behind ruins, artifacts, or myths. It stands plainly before us. Humanity has lived before. Humanity has risen before. Humanity has fallen before. The question that remains is not what they knew, but what they tried to leave behind for us. And that answer lies in the final chapter. These are very interesting topics, And soon, in the next videos on this channel, we will explore each one of them in depth. Tell me which one you would like to see first, and which would be the most interesting for you. What we choose to remember. Every ruin we explored, every fragment, every impossible structure, every forgotten civilization, every forbidden artifact. Together, they form a picture far larger than any single discovery. A picture not of one lost world, but of many. A tapestry of civilizations rising, flourishing, and vanishing long before the ones recorded in our books. History, as we know it, is not wrong. It is incomplete. A story pieced together from what survived, not from what existed. Throughout this journey, one truth has made itself clear. Humanity is far older, far more resilient, and far more mysterious than we ever imagined. The Earth has erased countless worlds. The oceans have swallowed cities. Cataclysms have reset entire chapters of our past. Yet somehow fragments endure, in stone, in myth, in symbols, in the quiet persistence of memory. The civilizations we call lost were not primitive experiments of early humanity. Many were extraordinary societies built on knowledge we barely comprehend. Their stones align with the stars. Their monuments defy erosion. Their engineering challenges our assumptions. Their stories echo a past where human beings understood forces and cycles we are only now beginning to rediscover. But perhaps the greatest revelation is not what they built. It is what they tried to preserve. Across continents and ages, we find the same message repeated in different forms. Warnings carved into stone. Legends of floods and fires. Symbols referencing parts of the sky long forgotten. Architectural fingerprints carried across oceans. Rituals that remember the world before the world we know. They were not just building temples, pyramids, observatories, or cities. They were building memory, anchors for the next age of humanity, signals for those who would come after the darkness. Their legacy is not a timeline, it is a cycle. Civilizations do not rise once, they rise many times. And each time, the survivors leave markers, hoping that someone in the future will recognize them. We are that future. We are the ones standing at the edge of rediscovery, piecing together the fragments of worlds erased by time. The ruins of Pumapunku, the buried halls of Göbekli Tepe, the drowned coastlines of Sunda, the precision of Cyclopean walls, the astronomical markers of Nabta Playa, the submerged structures of Japan, the lost rivers of the Indus. They are not chapters in separate stories. They are verses of the same song. A song that tells us where we came from. A song that reminds us how easily it can be lost. A song that warns us that the world changes suddenly, violently, irreversibly. And those who survive must rebuild from almost nothing. The question is not whether advanced civilizations existed before ours. Too many clues say they did. The question is, how many times did humanity begin again? And the deeper question still remains, what were they trying to tell us? Perhaps they wanted us to know that knowledge must be protected, that memory must outlast disaster, that the world can change without warning, that civilizations, no matter how extraordinary, are fragile, that time is not linear, that history is not a ladder, but a wheel. Or perhaps they wanted us to understand something even more profound, that we are not the pinnacle of human achievement, only the latest expression of it. We are not the first to chart the stars, not the first to build with impossible precision, not the first to measure the earth, not the first to cross oceans, not the first to watch worlds drown, not the first to wonder who came before. The truth is simple. We are a continuation, not a beginning. And as we look at the ruins left behind by civilizations erased from memory, one final realization emerges. What we choose to remember defines the world we create next. If we dismiss the past because it challenges our assumptions, we lose the wisdom it offers. If we ignore the warnings carved into stone, we repeat the same cycles. If we forget that humanity has risen and fallen many times, we blind ourselves to the fragility of our own world. But if we choose to remember, truly remember, then the forgotten civilizations become more than mysteries. They become guides. Guides from a time before time. Echoes from worlds erased. Messages left in stone for those who would listen. In the end, the greatest question is not what happened to them. It is what we will do with what they left behind. Their ruins are not graves. They are instructions. They are the memory of humanity waiting to be understood. A reminder that even when worlds fall, knowledge endures. And now, it is our turn to decide. Will we forget, as so many before us did? Or will we choose to remember?